Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness some scenes from the next attraction to play this theater. This picture, truly one of the most unusual ever filmed, contains scenes which under no circumstances should be viewed by anyone with a heart condition or anyone who is easily upset.
Wow, this movie sounds intense. I can't wait to see...
Aren't you excited? Yes, Mother, of course I am.
Oh. Greetings fellow horror fans, this is Freaks Movie Reviews, a new channel to bring everyone who loves horror together. We witnessed the horrors of Spider-Month and we're still dealing with the fallout of Krampusgate, so I figured it was time for something completely different. This month we're gonna take a look at the occult, which fascinates me in a certain way. Witchcraft, cults, devil worship, they're all shady practices that still happen in the backyard of society. More than you might think, the occult can be found anywhere. Whether it's your man-child neighbor using his Star Wars figurines as voodoo dolls, or it's your cat praying to the devil every night. It might even be your own mother secretly worshipping a golden statue of Muaniti Watanabe, which is a real Babylonian goddess, by the way. It's a goddess on which the Pokemon Mew is inspired. Did you know that? Nah, just kidding, I made it up. Anyway, for our first episode we're taking a look at Blood Feast, which is a movie that pops up every now and then when talking about horror history. It is said to be a milestone, one of the most influential flicks to the horror genre. But wait, if it's so important, why is it so obscure? I ain't heard of it, it's not a well-known movie like Psycho or Night of the Living Dead.
Everything happened so fast!
Oh, it's because it looks like shit. Fuck. Blood Feast was released in 1963 by director Herschell Gordon Lewis, who is infamous in the exploitation and B-movie circuit for his use of explicit gore. He's even referred to as the Godfather of gore. Yes, so what makes Blood Feast so special, aside from its horrendous cinematography, sound, acting, story, production design, special effects, score, editing, makeup, and I guess catering too, is that it was the very first horror movie to mainly focus on gore and explicit violence, giving birth to many wonderful subgenres like splatter, gorefest, torture porn, splatterfest, schlock chamber, gorn splatter, torture gorefest chamber, schlocky splatter porn, Justin fest gore Bieber chamber fest is the kind of horror movies that try to be as disgusting as possible. So they mainly attract thrill-seeking moviegoers who like to see blood, guts, and twisted limbs. You know, sick people. Like me. So Blood Feast focuses on violence and gore. The only problem is that it only focuses on that, as the rest of the movie is basically as well constructed as a Chinese toilet. And if you think that jokes makes no sense, then this movie is not for you. But if you like inconsistencies, plot holes, illogical story and dumb characters, you're going to have a blast. Just look at how subtle the title card is. Yeah, let's add some extra blood for those who didn't realize it's a splatter flick yet. I mean, with a title like Blood Feast, you can expect anything.
Cold ground and I pray that something picks me up and sets me down in your warm arms.
A lot can happen in 12 months, John. Tonight you're here with me.
Also listen to that amazing score. Either Gordon Lewis found a composer who's even lazier than Randy Newman, or, and I'm just guessing here, of course, he did the music himself. Who cares if it sounds like shit, right? My guess is they couldn't afford a real score. Maybe this is one of the best horror scores ever written, but the movie's budget wouldn't allow a full symphonic orchestra, and they could only get one trumpet and some kettle drums. I'm not going to talk about the plot in great detail because, well, there is no great detail. There's a bunch of young women getting brutally murdered and this detective called Pete trying to find out who the deranged killer is. That's about it. And I'll just have you guess for a second who it could be. It's one of these people. Yes, it's this young girl. She's the culprit. That's kinda refreshing, I must admit. I'm just kidding, of course, it's this dude. Some guy called Fuad Ramses, who is running a normal looking catering shop, so he can perfectly blend in with society.
I do cater to unusual affairs.
Or he's just as subtle as a Scooby-Doo villain. And I don't know what this actor is going for or what he's sniffing, but he makes this movie. His acting is so over the top that the music has to do the real acting for him.
Have you ever had an Egyptian feast?
But we all know there should be a laugh track.
Yes, an authentic dinner, such as one might have attended in ancient Egypt. It has not been served for 5,000 years.
So, where does the occult stuff come in? Well, it turns out he's collecting body parts to sacrifice to an Egyptian goddess named Ishtar. Now, even though Ishtar never was a goddess in Egyptian mythology, I was willing to look past that, as this is just a silly B-movie from the 60s. But the IMDb trivia page states that Lewis was aware of this little factual error. So that's how little he cared. We're in good hands here, people. Apparently the title card was shot outside the hotel Lewis and his crew were staying at. As it happened to be a sphinx and pyramid, they decided to go with the whole Egyptian idea. So if they had been staying at a hotel in Disneyland, chances are Fu would be praying to a statue of Donald Duck right now. Anyway, he keeps killing young women and Detective Pete is none the wiser. It doesn't help that his chief keeps pointing out the movie's plot holes as to why the police is completely in the dark.
There should have been clues all over the place. We couldn't come up with one.
But Pete doesn't seem to mind so much.
Well, we're just working with a homicidal maniac, that's all.
Oh, is that all? For a minute there, I thought there was something serious going on.
Well, Frank, this looks like one of those long, hard ones.
That's true though, it's a real head scratcher. It's not like there's something linking all the murders together, like, say, the victims were belonging to the same book club, or we're all reading the same book about Egyptian mythology written by Fuad Ramses.
Did your daughter belong to any organizations, clubs, anything like that?
She did have a name on a book club list.
And it's not like he's a guy organizing a traditional Egyptian feast for Pete's girlfriend, who looks about, I'd say, 20 years younger, by the way. You know, one of those feasts that commands young virgin women to be sacrificed in a similar way these murders have been taking place.
What do you make of it, Pete?
And it's not like Pete is attending a seminar about the Egyptian Ishtar worshipping cult himself, while he should actually be investigating the murders.
Isn't there any clue at all?
And it's not like there's a victim who in her last breath utters the word Etar.
Eater! Eater!
Strange, though. That almost sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar? Really? You can't figure this out? You can't put one and one together? You just attended a seminar about the goddamn thing. Okay, you were mentally undressing your 18-year-old girlfriend more than you were listening to the guy, but still, you can't link these clues together? You can't tell that Ishtar and Ethar might be the same thing? It's like two Russian guys would meet and they'd say, Vladimir, Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin? So yeah, Pete is about as dumb as a badly written police detective can get. I mean, he even makes the one from Plan 9 from outer space look credible.
Inspector Clay's dead. Murdered. And somebody's responsible.
So, killings in the city ensue. These scenes are really brutal and nasty for the time, but I just can't take them seriously when I follow after scenes like this.
Yes, thank you very much. Oh, Ishtar.
Gordon Lewis's epic musical score can get a bit obnoxious though. Let's fix that, shall we? and Pete may be a total incompetent dumbass, but nobody in this town ever seems to notice this guy. He's just walking around, stalking or abducting women in broad daylight. How come nobody sees him? Is he invisible? He must be. How can you not see, thing? What was I talking about? I don't really get his plan though. He needs body parts to make Ishtar resurrect in the flesh. Okay, I get that. Everyone needs a hobby. But in the last step of his plan, he needs to kill this girl at her birthday party. Isn't it like incredibly risky to butcher a young girl right next to a room full of people? It's not a good idea. Haven't you seen the room?
What's going on here?
Well, if someone comes into the kitchen, you can always kill them too, I guess. Or run away like a wimp, whatever works. Also, according to the information given at the seminar, all sacrifices to Ishtar must be virgins. How does Ramses keep track of that? Not only do his victims have to be women, belonging to the same book club, but they also have to be virgins? That kinda narrows the choices down, I'd believe. And do any of these women look like they're virgins anyway? Most of them have boyfriends, for Christ's sake. Even if they look like they're 30 years older. When Pete finally figures out the painfully obvious,
Ishtar.
he chases Ramses down to a garbage dump. He can do the only thing he can think of. He jumps in an extremely slow-moving garbage truck to escape. So he dies. I was going to make a lazy metaphorical joke here, but the movie does it for me.
He died a fitting death. The garbage he was.
Then the chief asks Pete how he finally figured it all out. And yes, even though we all know exactly how he figured the obvious out, he gives us every single detail.
The names Etar and Ishtar were so similar that then Suzette told me that a book called The Ancient Weird Religious Flanders and asked him more about the blood festival of Ishtar.
Shut the fuck up, you fucking monkey.
So that about sums up the plot. Yeah, it's kinda terrible. But I'm going to have to be completely honest here, every single scene is just marvelous. There are so many great moments in this movie. Some of them are subtle, like Ramses using a letter opener for an envelope that's already open, or he almost immediately jumps to the right page in the phone book. Or what about the opening scene where the radio announces that all doors must be locked?
Keep your door locked.
Just look at her reaction. If she's so concerned about it, why doesn't she lock all doors? She clearly didn't. Nah, taking a relaxing bath is way more important than getting murdered. The consistent awful acting makes this movie great as well. I just can't decide who the worst actors are in this film. Maybe it's the obvious Playboy models trying so hard to act.
Yes, Mother, of course I am.
And not look straight into the lens of the camera. Or maybe it's this quote-unquote actor.
Hey, baby. I'm here. I'm not gonna let anyone hurt you. It's all my fault. I made a mistake.
Oh wait, just wait, I just found the worst one. Look at the brilliant method acting of the girlfriend's mother after they both escaped certain death. What is she going for? She's just doing nothing? Did she think she wasn't in the frame? Because she's in the frame. The guy playing Ramses is a blast as well, of course. His acting is so hammy, I'm expecting him to turn into a kind of a baldy, pinky, whitey thingy. That's right. It's a Babe Pig in the City reference. I don't care, I don't have to explain myself. I'm comfortable with what I like. Fuck you! Needless to say, every technical aspect of Bloodfeast is wrong as well. The framing's bad, the editing's bad, the sound's bad, the cinematography. There's a scene where Pete drives his girl home because she's afraid to go alone in the dark, and it's clearly the middle of the day. And the next shot, it's dark again. How wonderfully lousy. So that's Bloodfeast. It's god-awful. One of the most horrendously bad movies ever made, and I love it. This is a perfect example of a So Bad It's Good movie. It's one of those instances where every single element is so wrong and every single scene is so consistently bad that I can't help but just love it. And there's a certain charm to it all too. That may sound trivial, but it's actually very important. This movie shows a sincere passion for the horror exploitation genre, and as far as the gore and violence goes, it's pretty brutal, especially for its time. So it does have something to offer, even when everything else falls hilariously flat. When you look at it today, it almost looks like the movie is taunting you in how cheap and incompetent it is. It's like it's proud to be just a nasty excuse to show brutal images. But it's not a cash grab, because it has charm and passion, which for me is the major difference between bad movies that I hate to watch and So Bad It's Good movies that I like to watch, ironically. Blood Feast just wants to be an extremely disturbing B-movie. It's not for everyone, but the interesting thing about Blood Feast is that it fails in being a movie, but succeeds in being innovative and refreshing to the horror genre, which is why I find it fascinating and refreshing, as well as hilarious.
I just shudder when I think about that butcher, that maniac, butchering all those girls. It's terrible. Terrible.
Next week we move from killing bitches to scary witches. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but I just thought it sounded good. Next week's The Witch.